Hello, and welcome to this video where I'm going to go through sort of like layer by layer how I created my latest tune. The journey begins, which is part 2 in my sort of like epic adventure upcoming release, which I was inspired very much by the wonderful steampunk airship art by talented Min Nguyen of DeviantArt, and I've now created 2 tunes, and both of them are quite epic and quite majestic and quite a lot of stuff going on. And well, yeah, I guess we can start by just listening to it a bit, and so you can sort of like hear that what we are talking about. So in the beginning of the tune there is like not that much going on, basically just violins and some flute, and we are going to introduce the theme of the tune. So it's quite simplistic, not much going on, but there is a slight twist in the end where I do this kind of modulation thing here. And I structured the tune so that I wanted to repeat the theme, but sort of make it build up more. So start with quite like easy, and then gradually build it more epic and more majestic. So here we have choirs and lots of stuff going on, but basically we are still doing the same theme. And here I wanted to do something different. I wanted to take a break from that theme that we have introduced and make a sort of like another part. Which leads into this kind of different build-up. And after building up, we return to the main theme, but really epic this time. Really pompous, like full blast kind of section, we suddenly like just tone down the whole tune and end with this kind of beautiful, fragile part that just leaves the listener like hanging on. So quite a lot of dynamics here going on. And I wanted to try this kind of thing where there's like this same note for a long time and the chords revolve around it, so that we can just keep that one note going no matter what the chords behind it are like changing. So yeah, but anyways, so how did I layer this tune? First let's look at what I have here. I have quite a bit of VSTs or sample libraries loaded, and I'm still like trying to figure out what would be like the right way for me to template my stuff. Lots of professionals, I guess, use like buses, so they connect their VST outs to different buses, and then they like affect those bus channels, and then those bus channels are eventually led to the master outs. But I haven't still like gotten around to figuring all that out. So currently I have a bit more simplistic way of looking at this thing. So I tend to have like just distinct copies of Contact, for example, and then I just group the instruments so that each instance of Contact is sort of like only meant for example, brass or strings or so. That way, that single instance of Contact is already at the same time sort of like a bus or in a bus role, because if I have that certain instance, I know that from that instance I don't get anything out but strings or anything out but brass. So basically, if I attach any EQ or effect to that content instance, I know that it's basically meant for only strings. So another way would be that I would route the buses and then figure out that, okay, this is string bus and so on. But yeah, for me this has been like more straightforward and more simple way to do the same thing. But hence I have quite a bit of instances, but it's not really a problem. I built this machine like a year ago, and I wanted to like really build it in such a way that I wouldn't have any trouble with CPU or memory use or hard drive streaming. And I invested some money into it, and it's quite good for these kinds of projects because I can basically run almost anything I want without choking. I have M2 SSD drive and a few normal SSD drives and 32 gigs of fast DDR memory and quite good CPU and so on. So it's been really fun. I can definitely recommend to invest into those hardware. For example, that M2 SSD is like really nice to have because you can stream massive libraries from it and it just works. If you don't know what the M2 is, it's like this new structure for the SSD drives. So it's more like a memory chip in a way that you just inject it into the motherboard straight into this M2, like a bridge, or what's it called in English. So it's like a really attached to the motherboard straight away without any cables or so. So it offers quite a bit of more like streaming output in comparison to the older cable-driven SSDs. Only problem is that usually motherboards only have like one M2 place, so you don't, at least not yet, get to put many of those into the same. But yeah. Anyways, if we go through what VSTs I have here, I have cinematic strings, which I really like to use. They are like really easy to just plug and play, and the UI is really nice. It's easy to select that what kind of string sound you want to use, and if you are in legato mode or not, and it's pretty nice basic tool to have. If you want to fast just play around with strings and not to figure out too much, it's pretty good out of the box. So in this tune I mainly use those marcatos. So and basically just like high and low. Or no, sorry, I had a wrong name there. It mentioned that it's bass, but bass, but it's actually led to first one is here. I have renamed it. But anyways, only a few channels from there actually, and then we have let's see, the ordering is a bit funny here, but Albion. I love Spitfire libraries. I just got the Albions, and this was actually one of the first tunes that I actually played with Albions, and I really like them. They sound remarkable, and the UI is also very good. It's really easy to like see the various kinds of playing techniques you have available, and pick the mics you use and all the different controllers and so on. So it's really fun to use and easy to play, quite intuitive. And these are very much used throughout the tune, as you can see. So all of the Albion stuff is like really present throughout the tune. And at some points, I'm just like sort of like duplicating stuff with cinematic strings as well. So let's hear, for example, this part with only like these strings playing. So as you can hear, I like the Spitfire Albion sound. It's not too dry, but it's not too like. It has a good balance, in my opinion. It's one of the most pleasurable like string libraries I've run into. It really works out of the box so well. And so yeah, throughout the tune, I mainly use like these quite simple structures where I just like divide the different harmonic roles and rhythmic roles a bit between the different strings, and at some point I duplicate them, and at some point that I just decide that okay, this violin does only this and so on. So if we pick them up one by one, you can hear that. So at least for me, this is like quite a intuitive way to build those string like layers. So just decide the chords and decide that what you're going to do, and then just like figure it out that okay, I only do this part of the whole thing with this violin channel and only this with this, and just try to listen at what works and what doesn't, and how the different notes should be like applied to each other so that it feels like it flows and there's like some kind of intuitive way for the listener to follow along. So it's, at least for me, it's sort of like a thing that you just grow up with. you just get practice and you build your intuition that how should I do this? How should I decide that what is this violin doing? What is this violin doing? Of course, I guess that all the classical composers study quite a bit like counterpoint and whatnot, but for me, at least, not yet. I haven't had much of that like technical study. For me, it's more like my ear, sort of like improvisation. I just listen to a lot. I try to analyze that what works and what doesn't, and then I just try to play and try to figure it out, and sort of like just try to guess that okay, this might be the right way to do this if I want to sound like this. So, yeah. Okay, if we move along, then there's the intro flute, which I picked from the East West Quantum Leap Silk, and they have quite excellent ethnic flutes and instruments there, and this one is actually Chinese xiao, or whatever, how is it pronounced, and it's really lovely. It's like I just love to play with these silk instruments. They are like so full of character, and yeah, it's lovely, and it works quite well here, I think. Then the percussion, I here only used a few channels. I didn't want to go over the top with the percussion, so I mainly have like a East-West quantum leap stuff, actually. Trailer toms, cymbals, timpani crescendos, and timpani hits. So really, really minimal setup. And the cymbals are only used for those build-ups. Timpani hits I use to emphasize the bass lines and the chords. And with the trailer toms I just want to emphasize those like strikes and the rhythm. And basically the cymbal swells I do manually, so that I just find the right lengths for those notes so that the cymbal whoosh comes at the right point in time. But yeah, nothing much else going on there, so quite simple, quite straightforward, nothing special. Then I have some woodwinds and some brass, and there again Albion is presented quite a bit in the wood section, so nothing special here either. It's just like it follows the string harmonies, and I wanted to try this kind of thing where there are like long lines and then there are like those short strikes that create like this more intricate rhythmic thing on top of everything else, and I think it works quite well. So it creates like this playful feeling as well. And then I have a excellent solo brass from HDO, Century Brass, a trombone and trumpet, and I really love that the way they have done these. They are like really intuitive to use as well, so you can pick the different kind of playing styles to different channels, and then you can key switch between them if you like. But here I'm mainly using legatos, and they are really beautiful instruments as well to use. So lovely to play, and out of the box sound really good. And then I have Albion for that bigger, more traditional epic sound. And if we listen with the woodwinds. So I think the main thing is to find like that right balance without building too much stuff, but having enough stuff so that it sort of like builds up and creates that sort of like full layering. And then last but not least, choirs. I haven't had I don't have too many choir libraries, and I mainly use HDO. I've gotten so much of HDO stuff that I'm able to purchase them. Their Imperium choirs, which are not like a sort of like public VST. It's a library that you get to buy after you have sort of like become their like a main customer, or I don't know where the limit goes, but after you have purchased enough HDO stuff, you get to buy also Imperium if you want. And I love these libraries. They are like they have a really, really nice sound, and they're quite good, the UI depending on what tool from the library you use, you get to choose between these different phrases. So they can have like long phrases or just like short phrases, and you can sequence them, and then when you play the notes, the sequencer follows along. And well, let's check them out. So for example, I also have the In Solidus, which is for like a really, really quiet choir. So here in the beginning we have In Solidus. It's really good for this kind of more intricate sound as well. And so the Empyrean in comparison is more powerful, and if you use the mod wheel you can really like switch between the different kinds of dynamics there. And so here you can hear that I am using two staccatos with similar phrases in the sequencer. So I get that more full sound because the different like they emphasize the different areas, the lower and the higher. Yes, and then I have just these brass effects which I use to emphasize the build-ups in the middle. So it works really well in synchronized way with those like cymbal hits and stuff. So if you listen to the whole thing, yeah, so they emphasize those build-ups. And then in the end I just have like this native instrument Unicorda piano, which gives this cinematic, quite heavily affected sound. And Olafur Arnald's Evolutions from Spitfire, which gives you this ethereal, atmospheric violin that evolves. Yeah. But there you have it. So I hope you enjoyed it, and if I have to sort of like give some pointers in the end, for me at least, the main thing has been to find the libraries that I love to use and I love to play. So for me it's really important that the library is like really intuitive and it sounds good out of the box, because I am not an engineer. I just want to plug it in, play it, and I want it to sound sort of like the thing that I hope it sounds, or like expect it to sound. And I have quite a bit of ATO, quite a bit of Spitfire, so for me those have been like really good tools. I've been thinking of trying out the Metropolis Arc, because I've heard so much good about it, and I think that it might be also one of those libraries for me. And different libraries have like different strengths and different weaknesses, so in the end it's not a matter of just finding one library. If you really want to like become better, I think one of the things is also to continue getting more and more tools to use, and in different projects like layer them, use different tools at the same time. Also it helps to get out of those like preset sounds that if you only use like one library, it sounds like that library. But if you have like Spitfire and something else, then it becomes more like complex and more interesting, because it's not so easy to hear that, okay, you're using that one, but it's more like, wow, what are you using? So for me, I think that I'm going to keep on getting more libraries the more I train and more I practice. Of course, they're not cheap, so I personally have tried to wait for like Black Fridays and whatnot. So all in all, even if I have like massive amounts of libraries, I have basically not paid the 100% price for any of them. Usually the minimum discount that I'm aiming for is at least 30%. Sometimes I get 50 even, but it depends a bit on the company, that how often they have and what the discounts are. But yeah, I think the good way to do is to just like build an Excel and decide that this is my next goal, and then just hunt for those discounts and just like build your like piggy bank, and then just pick them one by one in the order that's your importance. For example, Spitfire Albions, they had like this discount that if you get all of them, then you get quite a good discount, like 25% or I don't remember exactly how much, but it's like always there. So of course it's a lot of money, but if you really want to get those Albions, then it's really a no-brainer. But yeah, thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this analysis of this tune.